Ambassador Zethkari's tentacles trembled as she approached the human embassy on Station Omega-7. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 cycles ago, her own people had voted to expel every human from Zerion space. Now, with her world dying, she had come to beg. The human receptionist, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes, looked up from her holographic displays. "Ambassador, we weren't expecting you. Ms. Chen, we need to speak with your diplomatic corps. Urgently." Zethkari's translator struggled with the tremor in her voice. Sarah Chen had been stationed at the embassy for 15 years. She'd watched the Galactic Council's unanimous vote to ban humans from settled worlds, citing them as dangerously unpredictable and evolutionarily incompatible with civilized society. The vote had come after the Kepler incident, when humans had refused to abandon a failing colony ship full of refugees, instead performing what the Council deemed a recklessly suicidal rescue mission through an asteroid field. "I'll see if Ambassador Harrison is available," Sarah said, her tone professionally neutral despite the history between their species. Minutes later, Zethkari found herself in the embassy's main conference room, facing Ambassador David Harrison. The human looked older than his 53 years, the stress of managing his species' exile evident in the lines around his eyes. "Ambassador Zethkari," Harrison began, folding his hands on the polished table. "This is unexpected. Last I heard, humans were biologically catastrophic to galactic stability. Your words, I believe, during the council session." Zethkari's chromatophores flushed deep purple, the Zerion equivalent of shame. "Ambassador Harrison, I come not as a representative of that decision, but as someone whose world is dying." She activated her portable holoprojector. Images of Zerion Prime filled the air, once green landscapes now brown and withering, massive, cities with darkened sectors, orbital stations drifting powerless through space. "The decay," she continued, "has accelerated beyond our model's worst predictions. Our bioengineers estimate complete ecosystem collapse within 2 cycles. Our best terraforming experts have given up." Harrison studied the images, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry to hear about your world's crisis, but I'm not sure why you're bringing this to us. The Council was quite clear. Humans are too dangerous to be trusted with important work." "Because," Zethkari's voice cracked, "you're the only species stupid enough to try saving it." The words hung in the air like a confession. Harrison raised an eyebrow. 3 cycles ago, the Council condemned your species for what happened at Kepler Station. You lost 12 ships and 300 crew members saving refugees that every other species had written off as acceptable losses. The Valdorians called it statistically irrational. The Centauri Collective labeled it evolutionarily counterproductive. Zethkari's tentacles writhed with agitation. "But you saved 47,000 lives that day. Lives that every other species, including mine, had calculated weren't worth the risk." Harrison leaned back in his chair. "And for that, we were banned from your worlds. Deemed too unpredictable, too willing to attempt the impossible." "Yes." The admission came out as barely a whisper. "We were terrified of your species' refusal to accept inevitable losses. Your tendency to throw resources at problems others had deemed unsolvable. Your habit of succeeding where rational beings knew success was impossible." She gestured to the dying world rotating in the hologram. "Now we face our own impossible situation. Our scientists have run 10,000 simulations. They all end the same way: total biosphere collapse. Every rational analysis concludes that Zerion Prime cannot be saved. But you think humans might try anyway?" "I think humans might be irrational enough to succeed." Harrison stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars beyond. For long moments, the only sound was the station's ambient hum. "You know," he said finally, "when the Council banned us, they cited our dangerous tendency toward impossible solutions as a threat to galactic stability. Said we made other species uncomfortably aware of their own limitations." Zethkari's chromatophores shifted to a hopeful blue-green. "Will you help us?" I'll need to consult with Earth Command, but Harrison turned back to face her. Ambassador, you should know that if we do this, we won't do it halfway. Humans don't know how to give up even when we should, especially when we shouldn't. That's exactly what we're counting on. 6 months later, the first human terraforming ships arrived at Xerion Prime. The crews were volunteers, scientists, engineers, and dreamers who'd heard about a world that couldn't be saved. They brought with them experimental technologies that violated half the Council's safety protocols, untested theories that contradicted established science, and the unshakable human belief that impossible was just another word for challenging. The project took 4 years, cost the lives of 68 humans, and required resources that would have bankrupted 3 Council worlds. By every rational metric, it should have failed. Instead, Xerion Prime bloomed. Ambassador Zethkari stood, in her world's newly restored capital, watching human children play with Xerion younglings in gardens that shouldn't exist. The Galactic Council had quietly rescinded their ban 6 months ago, though they'd never formally apologized. We still don't understand how you did it, she told Harrison, who'd stayed to oversee the final phases of restoration. Harrison smiled, watching a human engineer explain something excitedly to a group of Xerion biospecialists. That's the thing. About humans, Ambassador. We never learned that some things can't be done makes us dangerous, apparently. Dangerously wonderful, Zethkari corrected, her chromatophores glowing warm gold. We're glad you never learned to give up. In the end, that was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not their technology or their resources, but their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. They'd been banned for being too reckless with hope. Now, across the galaxy, worlds that had voted to expel them were quietly sending requests for human aid, because sometimes the universe needed a species too stupid to know when something couldn't be done. And sometimes, impossibly, that was exactly what made it possible.